Yep.
Great.
Live.
Cool.
All right.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to leave.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
Hi, Elaine.
Great. So, hi, Hugo. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. I know we've tried to get this on the books maybe for about the past week, and so I'm super excited to have you join us today.
No, my pleasure. It's been a bit crazy, but yeah, great to be here.
Yeah. So let me intro myself and then pass the floor to you to give a brief introduction, and then let's get started.
Great.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Welcome to episode 5 of the Okcoin Community Leader Series. My name is Elaine. I lead up our crypto partnerships, which includes our overall relationships with the various token projects. I believe about a week ago now, we announced that we would be participating in the FLR Network Snapshot. We're super excited to be a part of this, and my team was really excited to get this going. So today we have Hugo with us, who is the co-founder and CEO of FLR, and I'd love to give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Hugo, co-founder and CEO of FLR, and we've been going since in various incarnations since 2017. First, we developed a new consensus protocol, which is the first Turing-complete federated Byzantine agreement consensus protocol. And what that means is it's the first federated Byzantine agreement consensus protocol that can run smart contracts, so Ethereum virtual machine smart contracts. What that means is federated Byzantine agreement is a type of algorithm, and it's quite scalable. The reason we decided to work in that area is it allows us to scale smart contract platforms without having to secure them with money or value, which is like proof of stake. And so that's why we kind of worked on that, because we think it's great to have an alternative to proof of stake, because we think for several different domains, especially when you're dealing with large amounts of money or a large amount of value that's been created into an application, it becomes very hard to scale proof of stake because you need an amount of capital that scales with the size of the network. So we wanted to work on a different consensus algorithm, and eventually we got to that and got to FLR and got to the ideas for what FLR is. And so in essence, really what FLR is it's a way to scale smart contracts. And then on top of that, there's a protocol for bringing the value from non-Turing complete tokens such as XRP, Bitcoin, Stellar, Litecoin, all those types of tokens, which represent actually between, on any given day, between 65 and 75% of the value of the actual blockchain space. So the point of that is to essentially allow those tokens to be used on FLR with smart contracts using the Ethereum virtual machine to have essentially an agglomeration of value on FLR. To provide a kind of a strong liquid point for developers who maybe have developed on Ethereum to also allow what they've developed to work with those other tokens in a trustless manner. And the most important statement there really is trustless, because that's what the protocol allows for.
Gotcha. Thank you for that really kind of comprehensive, I would say, history of how you guys started and where you guys are. I'm hoping if you could bring us back to 2017, which is, I think, when you said that you first started kicking around this idea and trying to understand how you can bring more scalability. I actually find it really interesting that 2017 is the year you guys started exploring this. I think, as we all know, 2017 was a big year for ICOs, and there was that huge kind of boom on just releasing these projects and protocols, projects and tokens on existing protocols. I'm curious, kind of, where your head was at and where your team's head was at in 2017 that encouraged you to think about building a new chain or like building a new network rather than just kind of going with the flow at the moment and releasing a new asset.
Sure. So my background was, I guess, sort of more finance-based. I was a commodity trader at several financial institutions in London, and then I left that and I went to study machine learning at UCL. This is all in my bio, and that's where I met most of the team we have now, which is CTO Sean Rowan, and chief scientist Nari Usha, and that was the core of the team in 2017, really. And we were looking at various different options, but one of the things we really realized was that none of the chains that we were looking at were capable really of being used from an institutional standpoint. So if you wanted investors or anything to be able to pass muster on those chains, that wasn't a possibility back in 2017, and in some ways it's probably not a possibility now. It's simply there's a lot of hurdles. It's getting a lot better, and the technology is getting a lot better, but the inability, say for instance, to have a smart contract protocol that updates very, very quickly without it being extremely expensive, it makes the use cases very limited. And so we wanted to build a protocol that could do that, but without being constrained by the amount of capital in the system, because you can't. There's simply it becomes very hard if you have to put capital against everything, against all the value you have represented, because it becomes extremely capital inefficient.
Yeah, I remember when I was reading the FLR white paper, one of the points that really stuck out to me was your assessment on the viability of proof of stake networks and overall kind of chain efficiency. And I'm wondering if you can dive into a little bit of detail there in terms of how that would actually play out for a large institution who's looking to transact on a new chain, and how proof of stake might actually, though it provides institutions certain benefits, how it actually does end up being a little bit more inefficient for both the institution and then overall the ecosystem as a whole, and the way you see that.
Sure. So we say proof of stake, solve the scalability problem from a transaction perspective. You can transact quickly, but it doesn't necessarily solve it from a value problem. Because it's still basing the safety of the network essentially on the value that exists in the network. And so to give you an example of that, let's say you wanted to generate a business on a blockchain. That's what we're trying to do as an industry. We're trying to, change the way we do business, and we're hoping that we create, wonderful DAOs with huge amounts of value that perhaps could represent, say, a decentralized version of Facebook. And that decentralized version of Facebook might be worth, I don't know, whatever these things are worth, hundreds of billions of dollars. At which point, under almost all proof of stake protocols, you have really rather a lot of sort of perceived value just sitting there in this say DAO governance token, which might be related to this application. However, there's certain economic attacks that could be undertaken if there was not a very large amount of stake also sitting on that network. Now, there are ways to make the stake more efficient. There's ways to use derivatives to make stake more efficient, but it does not alleviate the problem completely. It moves the problem around, it reduces the amount of stake you have to have, but it does not alleviate it. So ultimately, for anything you build on a proof of stake platform, you have to have essentially a related amount of stake that sits there underpinning it. And so today we live in a world which is centralized, but one of the great advantages of centralization has been that we have the police and we have courts and we have people who basically are arbiters of these things. And this is what reduces the value. Reduces the need to secure businesses with vast amounts of stake, because when those businesses mess up or when people steal things, essentially they can be held to account. That's not the same in a blockchain. And so we have this capital efficiency problem that comes from not having centralization. And so to embrace a blockchain that uses essentially capital to secure it, you are undoing all of that work, all of that progress in terms of us being able to organize together to handle essentially the sanctions and punishment, and therefore massively increasing the cost of doing business. So therefore we don't see that as a viable way of scaling something that is meant to replace the existing methods of doing business. Hence, we looked to a different set of algorithms, which is run by XRP and Stellar, and then integrated Ethereum smart contracts with those.
Yeah, and the conversation we're having right now actually reminds me a lot of the conversations I have with my own friends who are in more traditional finance or VC or kind of some of the more, I guess, non-crypto native, right? And they talk a lot about capital efficiency and just the overall, I guess, the things you lose with decentralization, which I think is what you were talking about, right? With, because crypto is decentralized, because you need to have higher incentives or, stronger like punitive measures to kind of make the system go, it does become inefficient in some ways. So I think it's really interesting that kind of the way you think about Flare is in that regard, right? You're trying to make the system more efficient and by actually changing the underlying technology of it.
So we don't need to secure the network with stake. Essentially, stake we've abstracted the safety of the network. We've abstracted that staking idea away from the safety of the network to the smart contract layer. And that's what creates our essentially our ability to trustlessly get the value from other networks such as Bitcoin or XRP or any of the others onto Flare. Obviously, we're starting with XRP, and that's what we're building for launch. There's then governance controlled as to how the network progresses, whether it includes Bitcoin or any of the others. So that's not up to us, but XRP is where we're starting. And so we then have essentially a staking sort of concept, but at the smart contract level to do something that brings utility, and we don't base safety or the security of the network on it.
Gotcha. Before we get to XRP and kind of how you guys chose that chain, and I definitely want to get there. I did want to get your take on this idea of building networks that rely on or take the security of existing chains. I think recently, Okcoin made an announcement that we'll be first to list the Blockstacks token, which their proof of transfer consensus has a slightly, and again, I don't have a technical background, so I'm sure I'll butcher some parts of it, but at a top layer, they are very, I would say the idea is similar in that you are relying on the safety and security of an existing chain to build utility on top of that, right? And I'm curious kind of what your take is on that idea of taking existing chains, relying on their security, and whether you think that's something that we'll see more in the future.
So both Flare and Blockstacks, although I'm not sure I'm necessarily that I know how Blockstacks relates to Bitcoin in this particular example, but Flare is a separate network from XRP and from any of the other networks. However, it can leverage the security of XRP, and it does in terms of each essentially Flare has an ability to sort of leverage the safety of XRP whilst also having its own safety parameters, which means that the safety of Flare is actually an addition of the safety of XRP plus the safety of Flare itself. So I can't comment on Blockstacks. I last looked at it in about 2019. So I know they've done some wonderful work, and very excited to see what they do, how they unfold. But Flare is XRP focused, but it doesn't leverage its safety on XRP. But it is a related algorithm. It's perhaps in some ways you could think of it as sort of a next generation of XRP and Stellar, but the purpose being really to serve the value that's been built in those networks already.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. Tell us about how you guys chose XRP. Kind of what was your thought process around starting with the XRP chain, and kind of what was the deciding factor in making that possible?
Okay, so really the way we look at it is let's start with Bitcoin, because that's the obvious question. Why haven't you started with Bitcoin? And the obvious, the thing that really sticks out to us is Bitcoin is a sort of a store of value. I heard someone call it the other day, gold for nerds, which I thought was a reasonable understanding. But more importantly to me, it's actually Bitcoin. A lot of what I think people perceive Bitcoin as, and certainly in the institutional investment space, some of the large hedge fund managers that are coming into the space, they do perceive it as an alternative to gold. But as yet, they do not perceive it as a payment mechanism. They do not perceive it as something that needs to or requires or can get utility from interacting with DeFi. Of course, some people do, but that's not the prime reason for Bitcoin's existence, generally in the market. Yes, there's some small use cases around DeFi and wrapped Bitcoin and some Lightning Network payments and things like that. But that's not what we think what's driving the sort of account opening and the price of Bitcoin or the adoption of Bitcoin, let's say. We think it's an investment sort of kind of centric. We think it's people's investment thesis, which is getting them to leverage Bitcoin. So we look at XRP in a slightly different way. XRP was built to have a use case. It was built to have sort of a use case as this sort of what they call in XRP parlance or in Ripple as a company, a bridge asset, which is the ability to allow two counterparties to essentially trade with each other through a decentralized pool of liquidity and trading, but potentially basically currencies, global currencies. And that's the purpose of XRP. So it's there really as a first and foremost with a sort of business focused or utility focused use case to enable something. And so we thought that was something that we could bring additional utility to. We thought there's Ethereum has smart contracts, so we don't need to touch Ethereum for today. There's plenty of people scaling Ethereum. If people would like to scale, certain things on Ethereum with FLR, they're welcome to. But we thought that XRP was the place that FLR could bring interesting new use cases beyond the bridge asset use case, and without having to actually in any way so FLR doesn't actually interact with the XRP ledger other than essentially observing it. So it doesn't require sort of anything that the XRP ledger has to build. Doesn't require anything for Ripple to build. It just sort of sits beside XRP, essentially watching it.
Gotcha. I think as you guys were working with the XRP blockchain and kind of launching the FLR network, I think one thing that was crucial was the snapshot, right, that you took of all participating XRP wallets. Can you walk us through kind of the lead up to the snapshot, how that went, and kind of anything that was surprising or challenging or just kind of interesting or noteworthy leading up to that?
I think what was most interesting to me was that 30 days before the snapshot, there were 13 participating exchanges, 13. At the time of the snapshot, I think there were, I could be wrong on this, but it's in the ballpark, there were about 109.
Wow.
Yeah, so the challenge of getting every one of those parties over the line in 30 days was actually quite tough. And I think the team did a pretty great job at that. It's a lot goes into working with an exchange. Actually, it's a lot of conversations. A lot of talking. Certain exchanges want a lot of technical details. Very early on, and anyway, so yeah, that was a lot of work. In fact, I don't think any of us really slept much in the last month. So perhaps last week after the snapshot was a little bit of downtime and a little bit of a shock, actually. But what really stood out to me was that over that time, XRP Ledger probably got some of its hardest usage, in a long time, and it handled really well. The infrastructure around it handled really well, with the exception of one party. The infrastructure handled incredibly well. And then on the day, everything was fine. It went off without a hitch. There was no issues. And yeah, it was great. It's built for the purpose it's built for. It handles well. It's scalable. Yeah, It was really nice to see it. I've heard lots of people describe it as a real life stress test, and the team at Ripple and the team around the XRP ledger, such as Toa Labs, and all the validators and node runners should be really proud of themselves. It's a great piece of technology.
Yeah, I think definitely for us it was also a bit of a mad dash. I'm sure you know, and I'm sure the viewers are aware that we announced that we'd be supporting the snapshot kind of late. It had we made it through though. And I think it had a lot to do with well, we had a lot of like product releases this month, and so we're kind of trying to get those through. But the second was just, it's a really interesting concept, right? And we want to make sure that we're communicating and messaging our support of the snapshot in a way that is accurate to how we intend to support the asset and the network in the future. And so for us, we basically ran the entire network and the Spark token, everything that was out there through our full kind of due diligence process for each asset, right? Which takes a little bit of time. And so I think even in that regard, at least for me, it was very exhilarating to see kind of, how quickly can we get this done? Like how much can we learn about this new concept? I don't know if my compliance and review and teams had the same sentiment, but I was like, this is so exciting. Like, let's go, let's push this through. So tell us a bit about.
Imagine that multiplied by 90.
Exactly. And I remember, obviously, we look at Twitter quite frequently as part of our work. And just in the lead up to the snapshot, there was a frenzy of conversation around FLR, about XRP. And I would say more so than usual. I know the XRP fan base or user base is quite vocal, but it was definitely something that we noted, just how loud the conversation was.
No, it's wonderful. It's a testament to, I think, the fact that I think the XRP community are very passionate, and I think people genuinely believe, and as do we, of course, in what we're bringing to XRP in the utility. There's a real hunger for smart contracts. There's a real hunger for DeFi. There's a real hunger for NFTs. There's a real hunger for all the other applications, gaming, whatever you want to talk about. There's a hunger for it. There's an interest for it. People like the concepts of the Oracle, the agent element, which is how XRP gets onto FLR. So there's a lot of interest. It's been great to see.
Yeah, and I think you were saying that FLR Network's supposed to go live sometime late Q1, Q2 of 2021, maybe.
So our biggest constraint has been scheduling a security audit. So that's scheduled now. We're very happy with that. And so that's scheduled, and so I'm thinking sort of it's going to be Q2.
Gotcha.
Essentially.
So once Q2 once the mainnet launches in Q2 or whenever it does launch, right? What happens? What's the connection between the snapshot that was taken mid-December and then when mainnet launches?
Okay, so Friday last. What was that? I don't know what's
like today. The 12th or something.
The 12th,
maybe,
yeah. No, that was the snapshot. So the 18th. We announced the ratio. It's 1.007 because all of the exchanges ended up participating. We only had 300 million XRP that didn't participate. So that was the variable. So for instance, essentially every exchange participated in the snapshot ultimately. And the original previous concept was, well, not the previous concept, the ratio is based on the fact that any participating exchange, any amount that they had of XRP would be redistributed across the rest of the people that could claim, as there is essentially almost no or a negligible amount of XRP being redistributed for claiming purposes, or the Spark being redistributed for claiming purposes, then the ratio is very close to 1. And that's always been the case, and nothing's ever changed. So just address that as there has been questions on it. So as soon as we go live, the first 15% of any claim that you may have. So let's say you have a claim of 100 tokens, you'll receive 100 Spark, you'll receive 15 Spark. Then over the course of up to 34 months, you will receive a slightly random amount of Spark based on the remainder you have left to receive out of that 100. And that'll be between 2 and 4% of the total 100 per month, obviously averaging 3%. And then, so, that should take over about 34 months. Obviously, if it's repeatedly less than 3% over 34 months, you'll end up with less than 100, at which point it's all just, there's a governance process that kicks in as to whether to burn the rest or just distribute it all in one go. And that's how the distribution works.
Gotcha. So then once I receive the Spark token, right, when mainnet happens, I have a question from, I believe, one of our YouTube watchers named Music. But the question is, once I receive the Spark token, what can I do with it on the FLR network? Do you have any use case examples that you could tell us about?
Sure. So as our papers make quite clear, Spark has a couple of uses. The first use for any native token is to prevent spam. So what that means is that there's a transaction cost, and that's the use for pretty much one of the primary uses of any native token. But that's not really like something that's new, novel, or interesting. So we won't talk about that. Ultimately, for Spark, its purpose is threefold. The first is to allow people to collateralize it, which means to put it into a smart contract to enable the issuance of what we call F assets. The first F asset being FXRP. And what that means is that essentially it's a way of transferring XRP, or the value of XRP, trustlessly onto FLR. And when I say trustlessly, that means not relying on a counterparty to wrap it and then issue it, so that you're not relying essentially on a bank, which is the system that we are essentially trying to get away from. But unfortunately, because of constraints of some chains, we have had to rebuild, and not necessarily wisely. So we are, that's the first use case for it. So the issuance of F assets, so XRP is what we're building. Potentially governance can ask for the building of other F assets, such as, FBTC might be an example. And so that's the first, and you will earn money for that on the XRP ledger as an agent, because you've locked up your value. At the same time as locking up that value, you're able to essentially pull the votes from that value that's locked in the smart contract. You can ask the smart contract for the votes back, and that allows you to contribute in something called the Oracle system. And what the Oracle system does is it's a way to get data from outside of the network onto the network. And that data is price data, foremost, principally. I mean, it could be other forms of data, but price data makes the most sense. That's in the early days. And so the networks such as ours, which is federated by Xanthid Agreement or XRP or Stellar, they don't have mining. They don't have block rewards. They don't have mining. It's not a competitive system to handle that. So it doesn't have rewards. So we've essentially replaced mining with an Oracle system. And the Oracle system essentially asks everyone in the system, please vote on either you provide your own data, or you can delegate your vote to a data provider who will provide data. And what this allows for is as many as one or as many data providers as you like. It could be one data provider could be someone who's pulling Chainlink, could be someone who's pulling Band, could be someone who's just pulling straight up API, could be any other variant or flavor of data provider that people wish to construct. So it's an open system and capable of innovation over time. So we hope it'll inspire some interesting models. But ultimately, the point is that you will delegate your votes, or you can, of course, set your own data provider, and you'll earn a return from that. And that's the mining return, essentially, of the network. It's very high at the beginning, certainly to incentivize early adoption. Early adopters get a much larger interest rate, and it tails off over time to 10%, which is the predetermined rate. That predetermined rate can, of course, be changed by governance. And that's the third use case of the token, which is it is for governance. So you use your token to vote on proposals that are put to the set of token holders. The foundation will essentially enact those proposals on token holders' behalf. That is the point of the foundation. Foundation is not there really to build things. It's meant to be somewhat inert until prodded by the token holders. So that is really what the foundation is for. It will, of course, do continual work on the network, but it's not there to express an opinion. It's not there to have a vote. It's not allowed to use its tokens to earn money. It's not, on the network. It may use its tokens to earn money elsewhere, but it's not allowed to use. It's not allowed to contribute to the Oracle. It's not allowed to be an agent. It's there for governance. It's there for the expression of the network's governance. And so that is the three uses. So Oracle, agent, governance.
Do you think that there will be more use cases in the future, or are those at a protocol layer, like it's just those three?
So the protocol layer, that's those three. Of course, like any token that has value, it can be used in any application that's built on it that requires value. So TFI, whatever. But the purpose of FLR, the purpose of Spark, is really to agglomerate the value from all the other networks, so that to become essentially a generalized smart contract layer for what is the bulk of the value in the blockchain system.
Gotcha. We have another question from a viewer, Kyle Beaglewell, sorry, is asking, are there ways that individuals can participate in the network? For example, will there be a way to earn with the Spark token?
Absolutely. So sort of low risk or zero risk really way of, obviously, unless you mess up how you do it, pretty much there's no risk to participating in the Oracle system. There's no slashing. It's not asking you for money. It doesn't ask you to send your token anywhere. So we hope that many wallets and many exchanges will essentially integrate with the Oracle system to allow people to essentially delegate the votes that are attached to their tokens to whichever Oracle providers or whichever data providers they wish to delegate to. That's something we have had many conversations with people about. It's something we are pushing. It's something that some of our hardware wallets that are listed on our page already specify, and it's something we're talking to exchanges about actively. So that's really the first way for people to participate. And we would expect most parties that provide those kind of delegation services, especially data providers, to take a small fee, a reasonable fee, 10% of anything they earn, maybe 20%. It's up to them, and it's up to the market. It's not something we set. But that's a great way to participate and actively encourage people to participate in that. The more people that participate in that, the better quality the data signal will be, and the more decentralized. Then, of course, for more advanced people, they can participate as an agent. They can either do that directly, or they could do that with a counterparty. So if they do it directly, they are in control of that, but it does require a reasonable amount of management, because essentially it's a financial position that you have, or you can do it with the counterparty, such as an exchange that offers those kind of services. So that's the participation with Spark, and obviously there's many other ways that Spark could conceivably be used, but those are the ways that we've defined in our white papers, and that's the core purpose of Spark.
Gotcha. What's the philosophy behind connecting the ability to earn Spark with participating in the Oracle or information providing services? I feel like that actually is not super common. I think there are a couple, maybe a few blockchains that do that. But in terms of connecting the earning ability to the information sharing activity,
Sure.
How did you guys, and why did you guys come up with that idea?
So first of all, our system FXRP, our F asset system, requires prices in order to handle various aspects of those systems. But secondly, is we don't have a mining system. We thought, okay, so mining does this useful thing for networks, or block rewards does this useful thing for networks, staking, and that useful thing is that it provides safety under certain circumstances. That's what it's for. We don't need that, but let's find a utility for it. And probably the greatest utility that has really been shown in our chains has been the ability to bring data in from outside, and so that seems like an extremely interesting way of leveraging it. It also provides a nice kind of community thing that you think about with ecosystems is it actually shifts over time. It shifts the value of because it's somewhat dilution. It has a dilutive aspect. It actually shifts the value from participants that are either malicious or lazy. They don't participate in the system, to participants that are good participants, and that's actually a really desirable quality in an ecosystem and a decentralized system where you're essentially asking people to come together to build value. And so therefore you are rewarding people for providing utility, rewarding people for being a good actor on the network. And to us, that's an extremely good way to handle incentives.
Gotcha. And I did have one last question. Well, actually, two last questions. One from David Carey. I think the question is, are you planning to promote your project in countries, regions where English is not good or maybe not the primary language? Do you have local communities for the FLR network or Spark token that would allow different groups of communities to better understand the project?
Absolutely, we definitely are trying to do that. So we have an Indian community, we have a Russian community at the moment, we have an Italian community. I think we have a Spanish community and a Portuguese community. All of these are non-official. But these are people who have come to me and other people on our team and said, look, we really love your project. Please, can we set up channels and things and get information from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So yes, of course, we're doing that. But as yet, it's difficult to find. I think there is a language barrier, a strong language barrier, and we're looking for people in Asia and in Africa and possibly in the Middle East to help us get across what FLR is. So if you're interested, please contact us on our main Telegram channel. And if you can demonstrate a really a good knowledge of our white papers or the technology we're trying to build, we would love you to help us try and disseminate what we're doing. It's just been so hard to get over that language barrier so far. There's some great people in Japan, but I don't know if they're huge Telegram users. So we'll see.
Well, lucky for you, Okcoin is a global exchange, and we serve, I think the count is maybe over 190 countries right now. So to all our viewers out there who are currently using our platform, if you're interested in the FLR network, like Hugo said, please reach out and let them know how you can help and how you'd like to get involved.
Please do.
So last question, I think, is a must question. What are you and your team most excited about for 2021?
I think what's really struck us has been the uptake. What's unbelievably exciting for us is actually watching people start building without our input, just announcing stuff. Like FLR Finance came along. FLR Finance is a DeFi project on FLR. It uses our name as a way of trading, but it doesn't. It's actually unrelated to us. And they came along and they just basically said, we're building on FLR and we're building these, I think, 5 protocols. And it's amazing to see that it's we can put out some white papers, some software, a test net, and people come and they start building. It's awesome. So that's been so exciting for the team. Obviously, we are excited for as that scales a lot faster and has sort of multiplicity, which we suddenly actually cease to be able to handle, or even be able to get a grip on all the number of parties that will be using the network, I suspect, because that's how we've seen it. But yeah, please do reach out to us if you have interesting ideas and you are interested in the foundation, potentially looking at you for a grant. We are running grant programs, so especially for for things that are potentially proven on Ethereum and would be of use on FLR. So that's one of the things. I guess 2021, we're most excited about getting the network up, built, finished, built, tested, up. That's the most exciting bit for us, and then hopefully it providing utility in exactly what we've designed it for.
Yeah, well, I would say that's we're very excited for that too, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Hugo, I am actually seeing a couple really great questions,
Go for it.
both in our Telegram, both in our Telegram and our YouTube. I was wondering if it's okay for me to share these with you
Sure.
after the call, and maybe you can take some time to write them out or answer them on your Twitter or whatnot.
There's also a Reddit, by the way, which we don't, I haven't actively engaged with, but I will do if I ever get some time, some additional time. But I find that Reddit's quite good for long form answers, and that there's a Reddit, I think it's at Reddit FLR Networks. So if you have questions, please do go there. There are people there who have spent a lot of time studying what we're doing and have some good answers. And like I say, if I can get there, I will.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Hugo, for joining us, and thank you everyone else for listening in and submitting your questions.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.